Happy New Year. Welcome to a special night shift here. Instant reaction over the news on New Year's Day. The UCF has landed their starting quarterback for 2024. I'm Eric Lopez alongside Bryson Turner. Neither one of us was expected to do UCF content on New Year's Day, but that's the new landscape of college athletics. Quarterbacks deciding to make their intentions known on New Year's Day. And big one here, Bryson, as of around 1 o'clock on Monday, while you were at the Citrus Bowl. By the way, if you're going to hear background, fireworks are still going around in my house. So just so you know. But there are fireworks are probably going on in the UCF football office because around 1 o'clock, while you were at the Tennessee-Iowa exhibition game, K.J. Jefferson, the quarterback from Arkansas who was in the portal, announced him coming to UCF. He did it on his Instagram. He did not do it on Twitter or X, whatever you call it, because he doesn't have one, even though some people thought he did. But nonetheless, K.J. Jefferson coming to UCF as the Knights find their quarterback, Bryson. Something that's been no secret was the Knights looking for a quarterback in the transfer portal, going back to Grayson McCall, among others. Remember, Grayson McCall caught that UCF basketball game against Ole Miss. But the Knights have landed their guy in K.J. Jefferson, and he will be the starting quarterback for the Knights in 2024. Your reaction, Bryson?
I mean, we thought them getting Grayson McCall would have been a big splash, but this is, I think you mentioned this when we first talked about this together, that if Gus Malzahn and Darren Hinshaw would go into a lab and design the perfect ready-made quarterback for their offense, KJ Jefferson would be it. I think he did a very great job with an Arkansas team that is normally at the bottom of the pecking order in the SEC, but he was able to make some noise and help him get some good wins, such as against Florida in the Swamp, which I actually witnessed firsthand, and he played excellently in that game. And the Swamp isn't an easy place to play, even when Florida wasn't exactly having particularly the best season. So I think offensively, quarterback was almost kind of a missing piece. Like, all credit in the world goes to John Rice Plumlee for what he was able to do, but there's definitely a difference between when you look at what John Rice Plumlee can do and what KJ Jefferson can do. It's like, I feel like, honestly, KJ Jefferson is like John Rice Plumlee's football capability on steroids, I think is kind of a nice way to put it.
Well, he's the best quarterback in the Gus Malzahn era. He's a perfect fit. You mentioned that. To me, like, he's been compared to Cam Newton, which I don't think is fair. Nobody's Cam Newton. But that's the guy that if Gus was in a lab with Darren Hinshaw, hey, can we do a Cam Newton? What's the closest thing to Cam Newton? Oh, it's this guy, K.J. Jefferson. He had a really good career at Arkansas. Now, I know people are going to point to this past year where he struggled and things kind of fell apart at Arkansas. But they had a new offensive coordinator, Dan Enos, who they fired, who was trying to run, I think, more of a pro offense, more of a, multiple reads thing, a drop back type of an offense, which doesn't fit Jefferson. Jefferson, to me, is more of a fit for this Gus offense, which is kind of do a quick read or two and then, make a play either with your arm or with your legs. He has a ton of experience. He's won games in the SEC. Going into this year, a lot of people thought K.J. Jefferson was maybe the second best quarterback in the SEC, along with Daniels of LSU. So now the Knights have that, an experienced guy that's won it at the SEC level, including in Gainesville this past year where he beat Florida. You would know, you were there, Bryson,
Yes.
in person. Yep. You attended that game when Arkansas beat Florida in overtime, which is ironic.
Arguably was the best game
of the year. And it's ironic because obviously UCF will play at Florida next year, and now they're going to have a quarterback that has won a game at the Swamp, which is among the many different factors why this is a huge, significant move for Gus and this staff to land someone like KJ Jefferson.
Just looking back at his stats, I think looking from a pure statistical perspective, KJ Jefferson actually did have a better night at Death Valley.
LSU, that was a good matchup between him and Daniels, a shootout. And LSU's defense wasn't very good, but you're right. That was a back and forth game. I remember watching that.
This is a very, but I would, but out of every game that KJ Jefferson played this year, Florida was easily his best one, at least that because it led to an Arkansas victory for one thing. He threw 20 pass, he threw 31 passes, completing 20 of them for 255 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he even ran 17 times for 92 yards and a touchdown. That was actually his best rushing performance on the day, and of course helped them defeat the Florida Gators in the swamp in in overtime. But I think that this is actually very interesting because I'm looking at KJ Jefferson's numbers right now, and the number that's really interesting to me, and I feel like might have been the reason that Arkansas wasn't really able to get over the hump this year with him. 42 sacks. He was sacked 42 times last year. That Arkansas O line didn't seem like was protecting him as
He
best as
didn't
they.
have a good offensive line, and his receivers were not very good, and it kind of all fell apart on Coach Pittman there in Arkansas, and that's why they kind of struggled the way they did. Although, again, challenging SEC slate. So, yeah,
Mhm.
I don't think that will be an issue here. I mean, there's certainly still some questions on the UCF offensive line, but they do have some returners back on the offensive line, plus Herb Hand knows what he's doing there. And you look at the supporting cast that KJ's going to have with RJ Harvey coming back, Kobe Hudson, who announced on Monday as well, he will be coming back. Now, Javon Baker announced the day of the bowl game he was coming back. I want to see. Let's get to August. I want to see him in August before I'm 100% convinced he's here. Nonetheless, if he's back, I mean, that's a good nucleus offensively, which to me on paper, Bryson, would be Gus Malzahn's best offense since he's been here at UCF.
Oh, for sure. And let's also not forget that that RJ Harvey will also have Johnny Richardson and new transfer running back Miles Montgomery to kind of work as a change of pace. And I could easily see them being passing options for KJ Jefferson KJ Jefferson as well. Of course, there's also going to be a new tight end in the mix. You mentioned Randy Pittman. There was also a couple of transfer tight ends that have come in through the portal as well. But I think the biggest thing, and I think, and who knows, I could possibly surmise that one additional supplemental reason that KJ Jefferson would have come to UCF is because Marcellus Marshall and Amari Kite, both offensive linemen, announced that they were going to be coming back to UCF alongside the addition of Jabari Brooks through the portal. Brooks, of course, was like an all first team SoCon in 2023 with Samford. But point being is that Herb Hand are really building this O line, and I feel like KJ Jefferson wouldn't have come here because he wouldn't just go from one bad O line to the other, right?
No, and I think more importantly, it's a system that fits him, and I think that's a big factor. I'm sure UCF I think probably pushed him on that, told him, "Hey, you saw what we did with Cam Newton, and look what he did, and he went to the NFL. If that's what you want to do, we could do that for you here." I think that's a factor, and I think this is big for UCF. I'm going to have a column up on blackandgoldbanneret.com this week. By the time you watch this, if not maybe during the week, it's going to be kind of where I think KJ Jefferson makes UCF a Big 12 contender in 2024, which I didn't believe, Bryson, going in with what they have. Because now you've got an impactful quarterback in a league in the Big 12, which I think is set up in 2024 to be stacked with quarterbacks. When you look at the new look Big 12, remember with the new additions of Utah and Arizona State and Colorado, you're going to have quarterbacks in the Big 12 like Cam Rising, who should be back from injury at Utah, who's led them to conference championships and New Year's Six bowl appearances. You're talking about a kid like Jalen Daniels, who was injured this year at Kansas, but was the Big 12 Player of the Year in 2022. We're talking Shedeur Sanders of Colorado, Dion's son, who is a super talented quarterback, will probably be a first-round quarterback in 2025 draft, assuming he doesn't declare this year, which I don't anticipate. That's why I'm including him in. And then the youngster from Arizona, Noah Fifita, who kind of won the job during the season. And when he took over the quarterback position, Arizona and Jed Fish took off. and had an incredible year where they're going to finish, 10 wins and I think close to the top 10 rankings. Fafita with a great receiver, McMillan, that's a team to watch as well as Arizona. So my point is, Bryson, this is I think it's stacked up to be a really talented quarterback conference this year, kind of like the Pac-12 was this year. And I think for UCF, and I think Gus and the staff realize we need a blue chip quarterback if we want to contend in 2024 because of all the guys that I just mentioned are going to be in the league, and we're not even talking about teams like Oklahoma State that have Ollie Gordon, who's the reigning Big 12 Player of the Year at running back. So, and the talented backs that they're in the league as well.
And yeah, like DJ Giddens at Kansas State. Like even if Will Howard doesn't come back at Kansas State, they still have Giddens who ran
Avery,
all.
well, Avery Johnson, the kid, right? The quarterback Gittens, right? They got a ton of talent there at Kansas State. You're right. Neal, the running back at Kansas, Brooks at Texas Tech, and so forth. But you needed a blue chip quarterback. You weren't going to go anywhere, I think, with what you had currently in the room. And Jefferson gives you that hope. He gives you that hope. And remember, Bryson, 2024 is a 12-team playoff. It's the beginning of the 12-team playoff era, which means if you can make it to the Big 12 title game, if you win the Big 12, you're going to be in the playoff. And look, I think as we have seen with bowl games even the last few years and this year in particular, I think going to the 12-team playoff, you're going to see a playoff or bust fan mentality for a lot of college football fans. And I think now for UCF, there's going to be a lot of high expectations going into this year to contend for that Big 12 title, because if you can win in the Big 12, you've got a shot to make the playoff. And Jefferson provides all that in 2024. And I think that's why Gus and the Knights were aggressive in getting him, and they got him. And now they're going to be, they will be a factor in 2024.
Well, one thing that will be very interesting to look at, because I remember that during the bowl games, the bowl games, broadcasters were showing off how a 12-team playoff would work this season. And one thing that I remember them mentioning is I noticed Arizona, because Arizona would have had a bye week going in. The way I see it is that you need to really just, I think, make the Big 12 title game, because I think that with these quarterbacks and running backs and these stacked Big 12 offenses are showing is that I think the Big 12 is able to be, I can't believe I'm actually able to say this with football now, because we use this with all the other sports, but a multi-bid league.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. I think two bids is possible. I mean, look, the safest thing to do, win your league, you get the automatic bid. And maybe your second place team, to your point, gets in as an at-large. We got plenty of time. But the point is, if you put yourself in that game, like you talked about, you're in the mix, perhaps, for the playoff. And that's what, to me, fans want. And I think K.J. Jefferson gives you that opportunity. Quite frankly, I don't think anybody else would have. I don't even think Grayson McCall could have done that for UCF. And all due respect to Grayson, I don't think he was that good. I don't think anybody in the current quarterback room would have done that at this point. So I think that's big for 2024. But I also think, Bryson, this is big for 2025 because Jefferson's 1 year only. And what this does is it buys you time in that quarterback room, and specifically the Dylan Risk, E.J. Colson, right? The talented Colson, the youngster. What did I say? Yeah, E.J. Colson. And then Riley Trujillo, two of the highly touted quarterbacks in the history of this program. Both are going to come in as freshmen, probably will redshirt, and can learn from Jefferson and take a back seat. And your hope is, the goal, I think, is that at 2025, either Dylan Risk, Riley Trujillo, or E.J. Colson is your starting quarterback in 2025. To me, that is because I don't believe that UCF can maintain just getting transfer quarterbacks every year. It's just financially, there's a lot of so, and plus, in today's day and age, I mean, these are two talented quarterbacks you have recruited. If you believe in them, you got to play them, because if not, they will walk out. So I think this is the plan. I think Jefferson starts in 24, and I think one of those three kids, you do a quarterback battle in 25, and then whoever wins out gets to be the starting job. Maybe some of them get some playing time this year, and mop-up duty, as long as it's less than 4 games. But I think that's the plan, big picture here for UCF. And remember, you've got the best recruiting class in the history of the program coming in this spring. You'll hopefully have another strong class next year. So now it's 24 and then 25, and hopefully you become a consistent Big 12 contender at that point.
I would say that the games to keep an eye on for that future quarterback battle thing is actually going to be probably be the first two games, because those first two games you have New Hampshire and Sam Houston. I think if we're going to see those three youngsters in any games, it's probably going to be in one of those two. And so those games like will be very important in that regard. And I think this is like Gus Malzahn's like last shot at the win now strategy. Because we were saying when UCF initially got into the Big 12, do not expect them to compete for a Big 12 title for a while, because they need to let the recruiting cycle of these recruits that know what they're getting into come in and develop. And that's what Dylan Riss, EJ Colson, and Riley Trujillo are. They're kind of the leaders of that class. And along with, and then on the defensive side, like John Walker, those guys. So, but because of the people that Gus got coming back this year, RJ, Javon, Kobe, the people they're getting in the portal, with headlined by KJ. This is the opportunity for UCF to maybe get a win now, because I know a lot of UCF fans are starving for a win right now. So we have, and then, but because after this year, I do not know if UCF will be able to compete for a Big 12 title until for a few more years, because obviously you got to let the youngsters develop more. So 2024 is going to be probably the only time for the next couple of years that UCF will have a seemingly a realistic chance of competing for a Big 12 title. And all of that is because of KJ. Like, the season expectations for 2024 have now completely shifted on the first day of the year. I
No,
think
absolutely, absolutely. I mean,
really sets the tone. It sets the tone.
yeah. I mean, you should have a good year. If not, it's a big disappointment. There's no excuses now. There's no more excuse. The excuses are out the window now.
I think bare minimum, like the way UCF finished this year in the Big 12 standings. In the Big 12 standings, they finished what? I think second to last in no, they finished 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about midway through the conference. Six from last, about midway through. You want to finish in the top half of the conference. I think that's a bare minimum. You finish in the top
Yeah,
half of the conference and have a shot at it, because obviously certain games can go different ways. I mean, you look at KJ Jefferson's season. You had a couple of games with him in Arkansas that could have gone different, that were really close, like that LSU, BYU, A&M, Ole Miss, Bama. So Arkansas could have easily been in a bowl game had things flipped for him. So the point being, I think, is that is bare minimum with KJ here. You need to finish in the top half of the conference, and if that half of the conference, at worst, you have games that maybe were decided by like a score that would just the better game. The point is, you need to be in contention and not shoot yourself in the foot, because I think UCF kind of did that a solid bunch this year.
yeah,
If you shoot yourself in the foot, then
sure.
people aren't going to forgive. People are going to be very less forgiving if UCF shoots itself in the
No,
foot
I'm
next.
telling you, there's no more. Like I said, you got to have a good year. Whatever that, 8, 9 wins at a minimum. Like you said, hey, that Florida game is winnable now. But Florida's got their own issues. It should be a fun year. But that's why you're all in on KJ Jefferson, and that's the possibilities that he brings. And you got to get the most out of him. And I think you've got, with that and the returners that you have, you should have a very good team. I mean, this was a top 35 offense moving the ball as it was. And again, you've upgraded at the quarterback room. With respect to all the previous UCF quarterbacks that have played for Gus, I mean, I would argue this is the best quarterback. This is the best situation that UCF will go into a season as far as the starting quarterback since 2018, which was McKenzie's last year at UCF, as it turns out. You look at 2019, there was a quarterback debate. You had a freshman Gabriel, Wimbush, and that whole saga. 2020 was kind of everything was up in the air because of what was dealing with the pandemic. Then 2021, did Gabriel and Gus, could that fit in the Gus's offense? And then 2022, obviously you had the JRP situation there, battle with Mikey Keene. Then 2023 is, can JRP put in a full year? There are no questions now. There are no questions, Bryson, at the quarterback room as far as the starting quarterback going into this season for the first time. And I would imagine this will be as close to a unifying the fan base when it comes to the quarterback, which has not been the case for the last handful of years.
Oh yeah, this is the most unified. I mean, this transfer portal, like even when Grayson McCall was a potential candidate, I have not seen the UCF fan base rally behind a player, like unite behind a player like they have in a long time. And we mentioned how like KJ Jefferson is an even better option than Grayson McCall in that regard. By the way, I'm looking at the 2024 schedule again, and let's just, by the way, look at the quarterback showdowns that are now going to be happening. KJ Jefferson in Orlando is going to be facing Cam Rising and the Utah Utes, Shador Sanders in Colorado, and then that Arizona QB you were talking about. What was his name again?
Fafita, this kid's a stud. He's like a Kyler Murray. Think Kyler Murray when he was at Oklahoma there. That's Noah Fafita. This kid's legit. Took over, youngster, and he's a kid to remember that name. I think I'm very bullish on Arizona. I think if you ask me who I would make the favorites in the Big 12, as weird as this sounds, because I'm not, this whole change is all weird. I think Utah and Arizona are the two favorites going into 2024. And those two
And
quarterbacks I mentioned are a big reason why.
but their roads to a potential Big 12 title are going to have to come through Orlando. And I think another big thing that KJ Jefferson is going to end up bringing is it's going to bring eyes, because let's look back at the season, and look back at the season. UCF was on Fox Sports 1 a lot this year. But I feel like with a marquee quarterback like a marquee quarterback like KJ Jefferson, alongside some of the quarterback showdowns that we're going to get, like Fafita, Rising, Shador, of course, against Florida, I think we could maybe see UCF get a little bit of a bump up in terms of television exposure.
It's funny you bring that up. I should have this week as well. I'm blackandgoldbanneret.com. A UCF TV article up on the Gasparilla Bowl numbers, plus how UCF did this season. I'll give you a spoiler here, Bryson. This is the first season. You bring up all those FS1 games. Those contributed to this being the least watched UCF football season since 2016. It's the first time that UCF has not averaged at least 1 million viewers in their telecast for a full season since 2016. You mentioned part of the reasons why with the FS1 situation, but I think it's not an accident, Bryce. In 2016, they went 6-7. This team went 6-7. If you win more games, you get better TV slots. But it is something I bring up in that article is, and you mentioned some of those games you just brought up. Does that give UCF more exposure? And if Jefferson helps that, that's all big pluses for the program. All right, let's wrap this up, Bryson. Give us an update of, as we record this Monday night, because I think you're going to see a lot of player news this week across the country, but especially involving UCF stuff, because as you know, Bryson, the classes start Monday the 8th. And you got to be basically enrolled by next week. So just give us an update on where we stand as far as this roster, as far as comings and goings before we sign off.
All right, so there was a lot of news actually with that. So the NFL draft, of course, people are declaring for that now, and so far we have John Rice Plumlee, Jordan Mask, a safety, offensive lineman Tylen Grable, defensive lineman Tremont Morris-Brash, linebacker Jason Johnson, DeCorian Patterson, linebacker Walter Yates, and tight end Alec Holler, all of whom have declared for the NFL draft. We also lost to the transfer portal Corey Thornton, secondary, and then Josh Seliscar on the defensive line, and then you have Jordan McDonald at running back. That said, we have, of course, gotten in the portal KJ Jefferson, a quarterback, Jabari Brooks, offensive lineman, Miles Montgomery, running back, and then we also have Dalen Dotson, the senior defensive end from UT Martin, who was named a Phil Steele All-American. So that looks like a Tremont Morris, someone that's kind of a Tremont Morris-Brashy type of player. While obviously there have been some losses there, UCF is really starting to rebuild with the portal. KJ Jefferson is of course, is going to be the headliner, but you have the offensive linemen, of course, Marcellus Marshall and Amari Kite have returned on that O-line. So that's definitely a very great nucleus, I think, for UCF to build from with that. But I think what's going to be very important, Eric, is that UCF's offense, I think, is the most secure it's ever been for at least a while. and what do we know about the Big 12 is that there's a lot of offense and not a lot of defense. So, if anything, I think this KJ Jefferson addition puts UCF as like a perfect prototypical Big 12 team where the offense is secure and is dynamic, and the defense might not have as many questions. They're making some differences, don't get me wrong. They got Byron Threats, Dalen Dotson. They're trying to plug the holes that we're going to lose with like Corey Thornton, Josh Seliscar, Tremont leaving. But I think that now that KJ Jefferson is here, aside from maybe a wide receiver and an O lineman, I wouldn't be shocked if a majority of UCF's transfer priorities now between now and next week are going to come on the defensive end, because that's going to, and because now that their offense is up to snuff with the rest of the Big 12 from a talent perspective, they got to be able to level up that defense, because that is going to end up being the difference maker, I think, between the Big 12, between just a good Big 12 team and a Big 12 champion, is which Big 12 team is going to have the better defense. And then of course you have the special teams with Colton Boomer just kind of shoring up himself. But I think the biggest thing with that we've now learned today is that this offense, I feel like, is the most secure that it's ever been. And considering the questions that we've kind of sort of had on the offense this season, it's pretty nice to actually go in with one less question, and that question being who's going to be the quarterback. And that's of course is a pretty big question.
We'll have more on blackandgoldbanneret.com throughout the week and throughout the year in 2024 covering UCF athletics. More on this developing story with KJ Jefferson coming to UCF. What does it mean for football in 2024? Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'll have some videos throughout the year, all various UCF sports and post games. We'll have a podcast, Night Shift, breaking all this down. College basketball in the Big 12 begins next weekend for the men's side and much more. And check us out on all the social media places. For Bryson Turner, I'm Eric Lopez. Happy New Year. Certainly is a good start for the Knights in landing KJ Jefferson. Good night. We'll talk soon here on Night Shift.